There's an idea in Jung psychology called circumambulation, and Jung had this idea that you have a potential future self, which would be in potential, and that it would manifest itself moment to moment in your present life by making you interested in certain things. And the things that you're interested in are things that would lead you down the path to maximum development. Now, it sounds like a metaphysical idea or a mystical idea even, but it's not. It's a really profoundly biological idea. You're set up so that you're automatically interested in those things that would fully expand you as a well-adapted creature. There's nothing really radical about that. It's kind of interesting to think about how that would manifest moment to moment. But the idea is something like your interest is captured by those things that lead you down the path of development. And there's some utility in pursuing those things that you're interested in. And that's the call to adventure. And the call to adventure can take you to all sorts of places. However, the problem with the call to adventure is, well, what the fuck do you really know? You might be interested in those things that are kind of warped and a little bit bent. And often it's the case that when new parts of people manifest themselves and grip their interests, let's say, they do it very badly and very shoddily, and you stumble around like an idiot when you try to do something new. And that is why the fool is the precursor to the savior from the symbolic perspective, because you must be the fool before you can be the master. And if you aren't willing to be the fool, then you can't be the master. So it's an error-ridden process, and it's also laid out in the Old Testament stories. Because the first thing that happens to all of these patriarchal figures is that when God kicks them out of their father's house, is that they run into all sorts of trouble. Some of it social, some of it natural, and some of it a consequence of their own moral inadequacies. But the thing that's so interesting is that despite that they're fools, they're still supposed to go on the adventure, and that they are capable of learning enough as a consequence of moving forward on the adventure so that they straighten themselves out across time. It's circumambulation, something that Jung talked about, this continual circling of some sense of who you could be. You might notice, for example, that there are certain themes in your life when you go back across your experiences. You have the typical experience that repeats itself, and there might be variations to it like a musical theme. It's like you're circling yourself and getting closer to yourself as you move across time. That's circumambulation. Now imagine something glimmers before you. It's an interest that's dawning. First of all, you're paralyzed. Well, how do I know I should pursue that? It's probably a stupid idea. And the proper response to that is, you're probably right. It probably is a stupid idea because almost all ideas are stupid. And so the probability that as you move forward on your adventure, that you're gonna get it right the first time is zero. It's just not gonna happen. And so you might think, well, maybe I'll just wait around until I get the right idea. So you wait around until you finally get it. But the problem is that you're too stupid to know when you've got it right. Waiting around isn't going to help, because even if the perfect opportunity manifested itself to you in your incomplete form, the probability that you would recognize it as the perfect opportunity is zero. You might even think it's the worst possible idea you've ever heard of anywhere. Highly likely. Nietzsche called that a will to stupidity, because he thought that stupidity should be taken into account fundamentally and worked with. So you can take these tentative steps on your pathway to destiny, and you can assume that you're going to do it badly. And that's really useful because you don't have to beat yourself up. It's pretty easy to do it badly. But the thing is, it's better to do it badly than to not do it at all. That's a hell of a lot better than just rotting away at home. So you start on your path and you think you're heading towards your star, and so you go in that direction. Then because you're here, the world looks a particular way. But then when you move here, the world looks different, and the world looks different as a consequence of having made that voyage. And so what that means is that now that thing that glimmers in front of you has shifted its location, because you weren't very good at specifying it to begin with, and now that you're a little sharper and more focused than you were, it's going to reveal itself with more accuracy to you. It's almost like a 180 degree reversal, but it isn't, because you've gone this far, and that's a long way to get that far. But that's a lot farther than it would be if you had just stayed at home, waiting. And so it doesn't matter that you overshoot continually, because as you overshoot, even if you don't learn what you should have done, you're going to continually learn what you shouldn't keep on doing. And if you learn enough about what you shouldn't keep doing, then that's tantamount, because at the same point, you'll be learning at the same time what you should be doing, and so that's okay. I think as you progress, the degree of overshooting starts to decline. There's nothing hypothetical about that. As you learn a new skill, such as learning the piano, you overshoot madly. You're all over the place, making mistakes to begin with. Then the mistakes, they disappear. There's a really good TED talk about a man who sets up an advanced computational recording system in his home and records every single utterance his young child made whilst learning to speak. And then he put them together, the child's attempts to say certain phonemes, and put them in a list. And you can hear the child deviating madly to begin with. And then after hundreds and hundreds of repetitions, he zeroes right in on the exact phoneme. You might not know this, but when kids babble, because young kids babble when they're quite young, they babble every human phoneme, including all sorts of phonemes that adults cannot say. And then they die into their language. So say after they learn English, there are all sorts of phonemes that they can no longer hear or pronounce, but in the beginning, it's all there. As they learn a particular language, they zero in on the proper way to pronounce that, and their errors minimize. And every time you learn something, that's how it is. And that's very useful to know, because it means it's okay to wander around stupidly before you get to your destination.